Hi everyone, my name is John McBride and I'm a developer advocate slash technology evangelist here at Citrix. And I wanted to put this little video together to show you how to get up and running with the Netscaler CPX Express Docker container image on Windows. Um, so this is going to require you to do a couple things. First is you're going to want to go ahead and download the Netscaler CPX Express. You can go ahead and get that from microloadbalancer.com. We'll go ahead and put a link in the video so it's easy to click. But what you want to do is once you get to the site, you want to hit the Get It Now for Free button, the big orange button there, and sign up. It's a pretty easy registration, only a couple fields. Once you give them your username, email address, first name, last name, you can actually go ahead and get the container. You can actually download the it's a gzipped Docker image file that you can go ahead and download. So once you get that downloaded to your device, you're going to want to go ahead and get Docker. Now you're going to want to go ahead and get Docker for Windows. So what you can go ahead and do is throw that into your Google machine and then go directly to the Docker documentation site and go ahead and get Docker for Windows. That's going to require you to download the MSI. You're going to install it on Windows. And for this particular demo, I'm actually have a Win 10 device here. We're going to actually show you how to get the image installed into Docker on Windows. Hi everyone, my name is John McBride and I'm a developer advocate here at Citrix. And I wanted to put this little video together to show you how to get started with our Netscaler CPX Express Docker container image and how you can get that up and running using Docker for Windows. So with that, you're going to need a couple things to get started. The first thing you want to go ahead and do is get the Netscaler CPX container. You want to go ahead and you want to go to microloadbalancer.com. And we'll put a link in the video so it's easy enough to click. But once you're at that site, you go ahead and click the big orange button that says Get It Now for Free. Once you go ahead and follow the registration process, it's all free. You can actually go ahead and download that container image to your local device. It's just a gzipped Docker image file. So it's pretty easy to download. Once you get it to your local device, we'll go ahead and upload it into Docker. The next thing you're going to want to do is get Docker for Windows. Now you can throw Docker for Windows into your Google machine and that'll take you to the site. Or you can just hit the docs.docker.com site, search for Docker for Windows, and that'll take you to this page here. You go ahead and download the MSI and then run it, get it installed on Windows. For this particular demo, we're just using a Win 10 Pro image with Docker installed, and I've already pre-downloaded the CPX gzip image. So with that, let's get started. So like I said, we already have Docker, and we've already kind of pre-downloaded the CPX instance. So I can show you that here. So if we just show you that here's the container image that we downloaded. It's just sitting in a folder on my desktop. And we also have Docker installed. So we have those two things ready to go. So with that, let's make sure we don't have any images set up. We have no images in our local repository. And we don't have, we're going to run a Docker PS. We'll show you that we don't have actually any containers that are running. Or we'll do a Docker PS-A, which tells us to list all the containers, list all the containers whether they're running or not. We don't have any containers running anywhere on this particular device. So with that, let's go ahead and get the container image that we downloaded from microloadbalancer.com. Let's go ahead and get that installed into our local repository for Docker. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to do a Docker load. That's the command, and we want to say -i for passing in an image file. So for the image file, we're just going to point to our CPX image that we downloaded here, the gzip file. So from there, we'll kind of execute that. It's going to take a little bit to upload it into into Docker, so to be ready to run as a container. But you'll see some status messages scroll by the screen as it's loading the different layers for Docker, different layers of the CPX image into Docker. So I'll just take a couple minutes here. And once that gets installed, so you can see here we're loading the different layers. Once that gets installed, we can go ahead and start the container and do some interesting things like that. So we're just about done here loading this. This is about a 600 meg file, so it doesn't take too long. Okay, so it looks like we're loaded. So we'll just clear the screen here and we'll do a Docker images. This is going to list all the images that have been loaded into our Docker instance. So you can see here we actually have the CPX image installed, and the tag is 11.1-48.10. So that's great. So we have the image installed and ready to go. So now how do we actually start this thing? How do we actually kind of keep going? So what we're going to want to do is actually run it. So we'll kind of walk through some of these commands here. So the first thing you'll notice is we're saying Docker run. So we were telling it we want to run a container. -DT means run it in the background. So spawn it off, give us an ID, and then return back to the prompt. Now these couple things right here are interesting because we're going to need these in a little bit. And the -Ps are for port mapping. So what we're saying here is we're going to map the container port of 22 to a localhost port that's going to be dynamically generated by Docker. Same thing with port 80 and port 162 UDP. The container is going to be running on port 80, but we're going to have a localhost port that is mapped to 80 that we're going to be able to access it through. So that's basically that command. And then we need to give one more command here, which is the image that we want to run. So we're going to say CPX, and then we're going to give it its tag. So 11.1-48.10. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this. You're going to see it's going to return back a container ID and then return back to our prompt here. So there's our container ID, and the instance has been started. So how do we know? So let's run a Docker PS to list all the running containers. And as you can see, we actually do have a running container here. Let me just flip the screen a little bit so we can see all the data. All right, great. All right, so what is this telling us? Well, we have a container ID that we can reference things like Docker stop or Docker remove. This is the image that we're running. Here's the command that's actually running in the container. We've been up for 11 seconds. And here's the port mappings that we talked about a little earlier. So you can see here that localhost port 32769 is mapped to the container port of 22. So that's going to be important when we want to do SSH. So we're not exposing. We don't have 22 directly on our localhost, but we've mapped localhost 32769 to the container port of 22. Now we've also done the same thing with the other two ports. One is 32768 is mapped, localhost 32768 is mapped to container port 80, and the same thing with 161 UDP. So looks like our container is up and running here, but how do we know? How can we test this? Well, one easy way is to hit this HTTP endpoint right here, right? So we can just open up a browser and go to localhost 32768, because remember that's the localhost port is mapped to the container port of 80. Let's go ahead, and we basically get a page that says it works. Now this is just a HTTP HTML page that is a little verification that says yes, the container's up and running and it's responding to HTTP requests. So this is a good indicator that yeah, the container's up and it's running, it's working, and everything's cool. So how do we connect to it if we want to do anything like CLI based or anything like that? How do we get to it? Well, so remember I said port 22 in the container is mapped to a localhost port. Port 22 is for SSH, so we could actually SSH into this container by accessing that port. So let's go ahead and try that. So we're going to say SSH, and we're going to say we want to connect to a port of 32.769. And then who do we want to connect as? This is typical SSH stuff. We're going to say root at, we'll just give it the loopback address at the local. So that's going to be who we're connecting as. So we're actually going to hit enter here, and it's asking if we want to store this fingerprint for future connections. We're going to say yes. I say it's permanently added. And what's the root password for here? This is the container password for root. So this is actually in the documentation. So you can go ahead and find that there. So we're going to actually connect to it. And you can see we're actually in the container now. And we can do all of our typical ls commands in Linux commands and things like that. So this is where actually where you could do command line configuration if you wanted to. So if you wanted to add virtual servers or firewall rules or anything like that, you could actually connect SSH to the container, run the CLI command line scripts, and then configure Netscaler for use. In a future video, we're actually going to show you how to use the Nitro API and some generators to actually configure these things without actually doing the CLI scripts. So just as a caveat here, this isn't officially supported. We're officially supported on CPX on Ubuntu, but this is a really good way of getting up and running with Netscaler CPX Express if you want to do some development, if you want to start doing some early work on the Nitro APIs, work on some configuration scripts or some auto deployment scripts. You can get up and running really quickly on Windows running Netscaler CPX using Docker for Windows. So I think that's a really interesting way of actually getting up and running and doing some development work on Netscaler. So I just want to put that quick video together and show you how you can install Netscaler CPX Express on Docker for Windows. As always, reach out to me on Twitter at John McBride. Feel free to let me know what you think. Leave comments in the YouTube video, or reach out to me on developer.citrix.com. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of me, and I'd really like to see what you guys go build with this. So appreciate it, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.